Solo players have saved the genre of MMORPGs. By the way, I agree with this. Here we go.
Hey guys, it's Lucky here, and today we're going to talk about something interesting. I'm making this video because I realized something. Most of us are loners. Most of us don't have someone to play our favorite MMO with when we log in every day, but we keep coming back in spite of that. And even if we do have someone to play with, sometimes we just want to play alone. Take a look at Asmongold, who started his YouTube channel 8 years ago, teaching people how to solo group content.
What's up, y'all? It's your boy Asmongold. I'm going to show y'all how to solo Conclave win. What's up,
Look
y'all?
at that.
It's your boy Asmongold, and today we're continuing
Holy
the series
shit!
on solo glory of the Cataclysm Hero. What's up, y'all? It's your boy Asmongold, and today I'm going to show y'all how to solo List Resort as a warrior.
And even those of us that
doing that was actually pretty fucking hard.
Have friends have a hard time agreeing with those friends on what MMO to play and when, resulting on the people that do have friends also playing MMOs alone. This was made more apparent than ever when I tossed up a video on YouTube about MMOs that you can play alone or without friends, and it absolutely blew up. You guys devoured this thing, shedding some light on the fact that, hey, a lot of us spend most of our time playing MMOs solo, and we recognize that. MMORPG.
Well, I think the reason why is that a lot of people don't have 8 hours a day to play. So they want to be able to log in and play the game immediately. So if you need 5 people to go out and do something, that is automatically going to add a fucking time dilation multiplier onto your investment into that game. So things that would take you 1 hour to do now take you 2 hours or 3 hours to do because you have to make a group. Being in a guild and having friends and having raid times and all that does help, but it still makes it take a lot longer.
These are more and more turning into RPGs that happen to be online. Is it the developers implementing?
Which I think is a good thing. I don't like the idea that MMOs have to have forced group content. I think this was more important back in the day, but now I think what people really want in an MMO is a shared world game where you go and you see other people out in the world and there are challenges that you can tackle and accomplish together. But those are not the majority of content. And I think that a weird parallel that you can draw with this is that a lot of the popular animes like Overlord and Sword Art Online, at least the first season, I didn't watch past that, are about basically one character. And yes, they group up and they play with other people, but there is a lot of solo activity there too. And I think that's why those things are very popular, is because that appeals to people in that way. Same with, I mean, you can even, Goblin Slayer is not really an MMO game, but it kind of is, or MMO anime, but it kind of is. And Goblin Slayer is kind of going and doing his own thing most of the time, right? He has these other people, and he does things with them sometimes, but for the most part, it's just him. So I think that in a lot of these animes, the reason why these characters are so compelling is because people relate to them. And I think the reason why people relate to them is because they are loners and they do play solo, which implies that people want to play MMO solo. That's the logic that I am using.
Or is it us demanding it? Why is it that most players today log into their massively multiplayer game and spend the majority of their time playing alone? These are all interesting questions, but perhaps the most interesting question of all is it ruining the genre? Is the fact that MMOs are becoming more and more of a solo experience contributing to the decline of the genre? I'm going to try to answer all of those questions today. In the early days of the MMO genre, you needed a group for just about everything, and even if you could solo something, getting a group was generally a lot faster and more efficient. If you played an MMO back in the early 2000s, you probably had a pretty tight-knit circle, or at least a guild that you spent a lot of time with. You probably even remember a lot of those players today. They were people that became not just online acquaintances, but actual friends that you logged into the game for and grouped up with and ran through content together. It was just part of the game, and it was just what you did. And if you didn't, well, you wouldn't be getting a whole lot done, and you'd probably quit. Except players didn't quit. MMOs were never more popular than they were when they were forcing introverts to join guilds and get things done, when MMOs were hard instead of easy. But today, the most popular MMOs seem to be designed around the player that is not interested in joining guilds, around the player that doesn't want to challenge in their questing experience. Dungeon finders, raid finders, not to mention the fastest way to level is usually it's the main story quest, which is almost entirely a solo experience carved straight through the MMO. We are at a point now where it's often less productive and less efficient to play our massively multiplayer games with other players. Grouping up used to be the fastest way to level, if not the only way to level. Battles were difficult, and it wasn't uncommon for there to be significant...
I don't know about it being... Like, I think that you could say that for... maybe, I don't know, EverQuest or Ultima Online or something like that. It's been I never played those games, but I know that in WoW, like, my mom got to level 60 completely fucking solo, man. 100% solo. So I would assume that, and not 100%, maybe she grouped with people 2 or 3 times and she learned from her mistakes and she never did that again. But other than that, I mean, yeah, she was just playing solo. Now, I made some friends, etc., but to be honest, I've kind of always been a solo act myself. I would always go out and do my own thing, and that's what I said. You know, it's like, oh yeah, I had a lot of friends in the game, etc., and we would do things together sometimes. Yes, absolutely. But at the end of the day, whenever I get all the loot from the raid, that's the last raid I go to. Like, yeah, we're boys, but, like, I got some other shit I was gonna do also, so, like, I'm just gonna go do that.
Penalties for dying. You were all in it together. You actually needed each other, and every role in the group was incredibly important as a result. There was always a lot on the line, creating a lot of moments to bond with the players around you. If you survived that sketchy pull or managed to take the boss down, you'd celebrate. I still remember waiting
Isn't this the, that thing that fought Ultima Weapon, or Omega Weapon? I think it is, right? In the cinematic? Yeah, that's what I thought.
High-level healers to come res me in games like Lineage 2 to get hours of my experience back when we had died and lost it on death. I also remember actually having to use crowd control abilities to survive when someone in the group tab targeted the wrong enemy by accident.
I miscalculated.
Yeah.
Everyone needed to be present and give it their all. But not just that, there was an incentive to bond.
I don't know, like, I can only speak for Classic WoW, but I think that Vanilla WoW was a very different game than Classic WoW. And the complexities of Vanilla WoW, I think Classic WoW showed it to not necessarily be complexities, but just inadequacies of knowledge and skill. It was not as hard as people thought it was. It wasn't this fucking test of skill and endeavor, of fucking tenacity. No, it was just you go in there and you fucking gotta get this guy, and maybe you counterspell that thing. If not, you just go around the pillar and it doesn't hit you. You know, that's about it.
With those players, there was an incentive to perform at your best. If you had a tank with clean pulls that could maintain aggro, or a healer that kept everyone standing, that was special. You remembered those players, you added them as friends, because that's the only way you would make sure you had a group to do that stuff with the next day. There wasn't a dungeon finder that you could queue into.
We actually did that in Wrath. Remember that paladin KBL? Like, as soon as he healed us in Heroics day 1, I was like, I'm adding this guy to my fucking friends. We're gonna play with him every fucking day. That's it. We're done. Yeah, we don't need to worry about a healer ever again.
Watching Netflix and YouTube, you had to be social and you had to try. But don't get me wrong, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. If you think Tinder is hard on average-looking nerds today, you should try being an average damage-dealing DPS in the early 2000s. When tanks and healers logged into the game, they got swiped right on more than supermodels on Tinder. They were instantly messaged by desperate damage dealers begging for—
Bro, Jeff, oh my god. Oh my god, so he finally fucking broke down and played tank, but before then, he was going around Orgrimmar, inspecting every warrior with a shield on, like, gassing them up, telling them, like, man, your gear is really good. Man, dude, you must be a really good tank. And they're like, thanks. They're like, man, dude, do you want to come tank Gruul's Lair right now? That would be super cool of you to do that. That's always what he would do, man. And so, yeah, I mean, if you were a tank or a healer back then, like, I'm sure you guys probably had these people, especially in, like, your, you know, Burning Crusade or Wrath guilds, where they were a healer or a tank, and they were just borderline brain dead, but they played a class that was useful, so you kept inviting them.
A group so they could actually leave town. But just like on Tinder, those tanks and healers swiped left on almost all those requests. They were already spoken for. They had already fallen into a static group.
Now that's true until you got Kingslayer for killing the Lich King. And that was the fucking, bro, I used to tell people, like, this is, it was like a college degree. The moment that you got Kingslayer, and you could fucking link that, and you could tell somebody, listen, invite me to the group, I took down the Lich King. And man, as soon as I got that, that was like turning, like, it was like being 21 and being able to drink. It's like you just get into any fucking group you wanted. You were done.
Desperate damage dealers had already locked them down. It was the best time to be a tank and a healer, and probably the worst time to be a damage dealer. But man, when you found that clique, a group that you look forward to logging in with and playing with every day, it was special. You'd shoot the breeze and comms while grinding through a dungeon until late in the night, knowing you'd all log back in the next day and maybe try out that new leveling spot or that new dungeon that you were all finally high enough level to do. But on the flip side, while some players were in that group making those memories, there were plenty of other players signing in just to realize they weren't going to get a group in time for it to be worth it, and they'd sign back out again after trying for sometimes hours. In other words, players were—
That's what would happen, is that I remember I would have to run home from the bus stop because if I didn't get into a group to do BRD before 5 p.m., the chances of me finishing before I had to go to bed were just about zero. It's like I had to calculate all of that time in there. Yeah, it was just so much extra time. Now, as a streamer, it's not as bad now because I can just make a group super fast because there's people that are watching. But if I didn't have that and I had to make the groups all the time, again, this is a time dilation. It's huge.
Spending as much time looking for a group as they were being in a group. I remember standing in town looking for groups in Aiden and Lineage 2 or in Juno in Final Fantasy 11. I was a DPS in both games, and there were a lot of nights where I didn't get a group because I signed on too late due to school or work or life.
Yeah, it's like it was basically first come, first serve. Now, obviously in like Wrath and especially in like Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria, like I would always get, like they would just kick somebody out for me because I had like fucking best in slot gear. I knew all the fights. I played the game 12 hours a day. So like I'd always get removed or get people removed for me to get in. But that was like only because I was really, really, really good. And also sometimes I would make the raids too.
And while I miss the camaraderie that came with forcing everyone to play together all the time, I don't miss that part of it. And even if you were one of the lucky ones that managed to form a static group, it only lasted so long. One person would level too fast, or one would level too slow, or one would go full Leroy Jenkins. And your odds of playing together the next day weren't great, but I'd take those.
See, for me, I was the guy that out-leveled everybody. Like in my group of people in like vanilla WoW, I was the person that got to level 60 and everybody else was still like level 42 and shit. Because while they were out, you know, like having fun talking with each other in Stormwind and leveling up their professions, I was out there as a warrior with no fucking food, no fucking first aid, auto-attacking cats to death in Arathi Highlands. I was grinding. And I fucking got there. I got 60. And everybody else was just chilling back there.
Those odds right now because at the moment indicators are suggesting that a recession is on the way, which brings me to the sponsor of today's video, Masterworks. Jamie Dimon—
honestly, a sponsor could just be the whole fucking games. I mean, like, MMOs are great whenever the economy sucks.
The CEO of JP Morgan said that what's coming could be worse than a recession. So what are experts doing to prepare? They're following recently released guidance from BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, who says that a normal portfolio of stocks and bonds won't cut it anymore. For 2022 and beyond, BlackRock recommends diversifying with alternative assets. And of all the alternatives out there, only one was personally recommended by BlackRock's CEO, Larry Fink: contemporary art. Probably because contemporary art has outpaced the S&P 500 for the last 25 years by more than double, and it appreciates more than gold, real estate, and the S&P when inflation is high. At a whopping—
so you have two crazy fucking environmentalists throw soup on it.
33% annually. Repeating, of course. That's why I've partnered with Masterworks, because they're helping you secure your financial future by offering investments in the same contemporary art. This is not NFTs. This is fractional shares of actual paintings by legends like Picasso and Banksy. When Masterworks sells the paintings that you are invested in, you get a potential return. And the 6 paintings that they've sold so far have averaged a 29% net annual return, even through COVID, a bear market, and record high inflation. Now, of course, past performance is no guarantee of future results, but I think this is absolutely an option to consider when diversifying your portfolio. With inflation still crazy high and stocks still crazy low, Masterworks is seeing a record demand, but you can skip the waitlist by clicking the link down in the description below. Thanks for listening, and let's get back to it. Okay, so like I was saying, it's nearly impossible—
It's actually a very good ad, by the way. The messaging for that is extremely good. Yeah, Like, whenever I watch ads, I mean, obviously, you know, I've taken marketing classes, and I think, yeah, it was a very good ad. No, thank you. Sponsored by a scam, probably a scam. Well, yeah, but like the thing is, what would you guys say about like Raid Shadow Legends or any of these other things? You'd also say that's a scam too. So like somebody who constantly has their guard up and thinks that everything that's being sponsored and everything that's being promoted is a scam. Like, these people are not your audience, so, like, you shouldn't care what their opinions are because you can never win them over.
For a group of people to sync their lives together in a way that would allow them to progress through an MMO at the exact same speed. And even if you did have a static group and you were committed to staying in that static group, there would be days where you couldn't play because that meant you would outlevel the people in the group. And there's the rub.
Yeah, of course.
That's the reason that MMOs focused on having a solid single player experience began their rise to dominance. If the MMO had a fleshed out enough solo experience, you always had something to do. If your
I think this was also another selling point of WoW, is that you could get to max level and do a bunch of stuff without having to play with other people. The fact that you could do that in classic WoW was so much different than other MMOs at the time.
Friends weren't on, or if you didn't have any to begin with, you could still make great progress in the game. And this was a welcome change. And more than ever before, we're seeing MMOs focus on the solo experience all the way from early on in their development. Here's a clip from the recent Ashes of Creation developer update.
Ashes of Creation is looking to fulfill both that solo-oriented mind in gameplay, as well as the group and social experience.
WoW kind of started this, in my opinion. It had a very casual questing experience that would take you all the way through most of the game, but initially it lacked the Dungeon Finder. Later on, toward the end of the Wrath of the Lich King expansion, the Dungeon Finder was finally added. No longer were we walking to dungeons and forming groups in zone chat. We are now queued into an instance and tossed into a group that may or may not acknowledge each other's existence in group chat. We successfully got rid of boring hours of standing around looking for a group, but we also successfully got rid of a ton of social interaction in the process. You don't need...
I think that you can easily look at it and say it's a contemporary thing, or like it was a bad mistake to have Dungeon Finder. But I think that if you look at New World, for example, everybody wanted a Dungeon Finder even now. Like before they added it. So it wasn't like, oh, this was a bad decision that should never be repeated again. New World had a system that was like WoW before this, and the players didn't want it.
To make friends. You can just queue up for a dungeon when you want to, on your schedule. It didn't matter if you were great at the game or bad at it. You'd get tossed into a group all the same. There was a lot less social accountability. One inevitable downside...
That, I think, is a very bad thing. I think a lack of social accountability... You can't have a social experience and not have social accountability to that social experience. Because if you don't have that, you have people like me. You get somebody like me that queues in with cloth armor, tanking with Thunder Fury, and it's level 80, and I queued in there with my friend, and we just think that it's funny to troll people. This is not a good thing. Yes, no accountability equals disaster. Exactly. You have to have social accountability, or you can just never have like any group content that's good, because people find it more fun to be obnoxious and assholes than to just be normal players.
To this, dungeon content began to be designed for these types of groups. Random groups of strangers were more prone to giving up on a group as soon as it was apparent it wasn't going to be a smooth dungeon experience. They knew they could simply queue up for a dungeon group later, and as a result, commitment to the group was lacking, and you couldn't have content as difficult as you used to. People just wouldn't stick around through the wipes. The solution was to make dungeon content easier. When's the last time you used a CC ability on an ad? No way. You pull that bad boy in and melt it down with everything else, relying on...
And again, I have to say that when was the last time I used a CC ability on an ad? I think I probably used more CC on ads in Shadowlands than I used CC on ads in Burning Crusade Classic. I knew everything about the game. Like, we knew everything. Yeah, we mowed that shit down. It wasn't even a problem. So again, I think that it was another instance of people looking at it from a skewed perspective.
Players to CC mobs was tedious. It required communication. Cleaving it all down was easy. Everyone could be on the same page without even having to talk to each other. And I see this in almost every MMO. Dungeons are generally pretty easy. They generally don't require a lot of communication, and as a result, they often end up being pretty forgettable. You romp through it, you melt everything inside, and then you forget the people and the content that you experience. It'd now be fair to describe...
I think that Final Fantasy does a really good job with making dungeons part of the actual story. Like, whenever you think of some of the dungeons in Final Fantasy, the reason why they're memorable is because they're connected to the story. It's not just because of the dungeon content. It's not because of the bosses or anything like that. The Vault. Yeah, I think the Vault is a really good example. The one where you go up the that crashed ship and you talk to Midgard Slumber, right? Like, that was a big one. I feel like I remember those because of their impact in the story, not necessarily because of the gameplay. Yeah, Phantom Palace and Lost Ark is so good. Well, Phantom Palace and Lost Ark is very good, but again, think about Phantom Palace as well. Phantom Palace is the first time you really fight Belshazzar, and she's seen as like one of the main enemies in the whole game. So that's another reason why it's a big deal.
Most MMORPGs as single-player games with some group content tacked onto the side. All of the biggest MMOs like Final Fantasy XIV, ESO, Guild Wars 2, World of Warcraft, they've all got tons and tons of solo content for you to do when you log in. Oftentimes, they have way more solo content than they do group content, and they've succeeded all the more for it. Players have spoken silently and with their wallets. They gravitate towards the MMOs with a fleshed-out solo experience. They want the option to group up on their schedule and not somebody else's, and sometimes they want the option to not have to group up at all. So this begs the question, why play MMOs at all if you're the person that doesn't want to interact with anyone at all? And it's a fair question, but
I don't think it is. I think that a lot of people, again, they want to be in a shared world where they can show off their accomplishments. So, for example, like, they want to be that person that can, you know, sit up in the city and have... Like for example, like Final Fantasy, you have Necromancer. Like, Necromancer is fundamentally a solo achievement, and people will be like, oh fuck, he's got that. Whereas whenever you're playing a single-player game, that doesn't matter as much. Another example of this is like the Golden Turpion in Lost Ark. There are always people that will message me and be like, damn, you have that fucking mount. That's badass, right? Especially whenever I got it and like nobody else had it except for a handful of other people. Like, it was a very rare mount, and people were like, holy shit, how'd you get that? Like, what is this? And even now, whenever I show my adventure journal progress, because I have 100% in all the zones, people are really, really impressed. And I think also, yeah, it's like flexing. People want to be conspicuous with their accomplishments in games. It's that simple. And I think that MMOs provide that option. And also, they serve as a pseudo-social network where, like, you can talk to other people, and you can also be a slightly different person if you choose to be.
I think it's the fact that MMOs are an unending story. They're not just about interacting with other people. They are about the journey, the days, the weeks, the months that we put into them. They'll be relevant for years. It always feels bad when you're watching a good show and you go to put on the next season only to find out there isn't one. The show got canceled years ago. Or maybe this calls for a more direct comparison, such as when you're enjoying a single player game and you have an epic fight and you get that bittersweet feeling.
I was getting depression fighting is it Godfrey? Horaloo Warrior. I was getting depression because I thought almost for sure that, like, after this was the end of the game. And I was like, I can't believe Elden Ring is going to be over today. Why does it have to be over? Why did it have to end? This isn't fair. This is wrong. Like, I can't fucking believe this. No, 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 take me back. I was so fucking stressed about it. I was mad because I had so much fun playing the game. And I definitely felt that way with Elden Ring. I felt that way also with Valheim. I remember whenever you fight, you know, the last boss, the undead guy, it's like crawling around. I knew that whenever I beat him, the game would be over for me. I would have beaten the game. I would have accomplished everything that I wanted to accomplish. And so I did everything that I wanted to do. I beat him, and it was bittersweet, but it was over.
Because you know a final battle when you see one. It's epic, it gives closure, and you're completely aware of the fact that you're likely only a few...
By the way, for a lot of people, the Lich King was that final battle.
few lines of dialogue, and maybe a cutscene away from putting the game down forever. The character you're leveling up, the skills you unlock, the cool cosmetics you found, you'll never see them again, nor will anyone else. You beat the game and you'll probably never boot it up. It's a conflicting moment of wow, that was amazing, and damn, it's over. And that's where MMORPGs come in. They don't end, or at least you hope they won't anytime soon. You don't have to walk away from the story and the character and the hero you leveled. You'll be jumping back onto it in the next expansion. There's also the fact that playing alone isn't always a conscious choice. It's not always a decision made through social anxiety. Sometimes it just happens that way. I don't consider myself a solo MMO player, but if I look back at my recent experiences in MMOs, I have a lot of time spent playing solo. It wasn't even a conscious decision.
Most of my time playing solo was because of this, and also a lot of times in WoW, like, yes, there were many times where I would get priority invited over all of the other DPS, but there would be other times where I wouldn't, and I think everybody knows why. And so that's why I made a lot of videos on how to solo things and how to get things done on your own, because you know, sometimes people don't want to play with you.
But my schedule fell out of sync with the people I tended to group with. I played the MMO for half the day and then maybe went to work on a YouTube video. The next day, they were levels ahead of me, and it didn't make sense to group. Or on the flip side, I'd be the one degenning the MMO the way we MMO players sometimes do, and someone in the group would have work, a new girlfriend, a new kid, or school, and they'd fall out of sync. And there's one critical problem that's arisen with the new progression rates of MMOs today. Even though you're only a day or two behind your friends, you might as well be on a different server while you're leveling up. They're working on different dungeons, different zones, and they're grabbing different materials, and while of course completing completely different quests. Fortunately, once you hit max level, that problem mostly tends to fade away, but you have to get to max level first. And so
I think that Lost Ark does a relatively good job at this, because there are still reasons people want to go back and do Vaulton, or still reasons people want to go back and do I mean Vicus, I mean fuck that fight, but a lot of the old ones people will come back and do them. And it gives people reasons to play with their friends that are lower levels. Like Final Fantasy, yeah, Final Fantasy gives you reasons for that as well. Card runs in Abyss Dungeons. I got a legendary card selection pack. So there's this one time I was doing Phantom Palace, and there were two berserkers in the group. It was me and this other guy, and we wiped 2 times on like the king guy that you have to like hit the orbs, and like if you hit them all at the same time everybody dies. Right? Well, we kept wiping on this, and this berserker absolutely had like a fucking mental breakdown spurg out. And he was like, I will not let you finish this dungeon. And I just told him, like, stop crying. Just do it again. We're going to get it eventually. And he's like, no, we're ending it right now. We're ending this dungeon right now. And I was like, no, we're not. Stop crying. Just come over here and let's play the game. And so finally this guy, like, Alt F4s out of his game. And we queue again, and we kill the boss with 3 people. Legendary card selection pack drops. I bid that shit, and I get it for 5,000 gold. I got one of those for 5 fucking K. Meanwhile, and by the way, the other berserker was a whale. So, like, straight up, like, yeah, I got it for 5K. Well, because the other 2 people were fucking garbage. That's why we were wiping. And so they're like, was that good? I'm like, nah, it's, bro, like, what do you know? What is this, Pokemon? Of course you don't want a card. Like, what are you talking about? And so, yeah, the only other whale, he was like a 1,500 item of a whale, and he just fucking left the group, and I got a free one, man.
Players do these days. Look at New Worlds. Look at Lost Ark. This is why it's so critical for games to have a solo-friendly leveling experience. As much as we all dream of jumping into an MMO with our friends and leveling through the whole thing together, life just gets in the way. Most of us
I actually don't look forward to that. I don't really care that much about it, because whenever I play a new game, part of the enjoyment for me is making new friends and creating a new adventure. And I do that every time. Like, I go into it fresh, and I'm ready to play with whoever the fuck. I'm ready to do whatever the fuck. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of my my streams go so well, is that because I'm so open to playing with other, you know, random ass people, it creates better narratives. Like people like Gus, family, you know, all of that stuff. These things are happening because I'm not sticking just with, you know, a group of 4 other streamers and we play every game together. No, there's a lot more to it than that. And yeah, Mage Dog, yeah. No, I enjoy that. That's what, that's the positive thing to it about, about it to me. Yeah, there you go.
have either school, jobs, significant others, or a family, or some combination of the four that require varying amounts of our time.
Yeah.
So let's circle back to the question at the beginning of the video. MMOs were more popular than ever when they forced us to play together, when they lacked dungeon finders and raid finders. But these days, MMOs are often built with the solo player at the forefront of their design. Do MMOs attract fewer players because of this change? Or do MMOs attract fewer players because we changed? Whilst popular,
I think it's because we changed, because New World, again, had a lot of those features that old MMOs were supposed to have, and that were supposed to make it, you know, like really cool and everything, and people didn't like it. And I think WildStar had some of the similar problems. So yeah, I mean, I'm not really a big advocate of that kind of stuff.
population peaked at around 12 million current subscribers all the way back in 2010. It's been on the decline since, and no other MMO has even come close to reaching its concurrent player base. Why is that? Is it due to switching the focus to the solo experience? I don't think so. The most successful MMOs today have the best solo content. I think we changed, so the MMOs had to follow suit. We were once okay with standing in town for an hour looking for a group. It was all new and shiny, this whole going online and grouping with people from around the world. Most players had never really experienced that before, but the novelty wore off. The excitement of being able to log into a game and play it with other people wasn't new anymore, and no longer outweighed the disappointment of standing in town looking for a group. And not only that, every week new online games were popping up that could also satisfy that same online desire. The only difference is they had you in a match in 5 minutes. Today, being subjected to an hour-long wait in town, trying to form a party in zone chat is a quit moment for most players. There's too many other options now.
I think the average age of MMO players and the average age of gamers in general has gone up. And whenever you have the average age go up, you have the average time investment required also go down. Because you just can't ask somebody who's 35 with a kid and a wife and a job to sit around for an hour just to make a group. You just can't do that.
Too many other multiplayer games that will have you in a match.
I think the reason why Classic WoW and the reason why Burning Crusade and some of these other games are still successful now as classic games is because they gave those players, those, you know, 35-year-old dads, a way to make incremental small progress. Whether they're leveling up a reputation, whether they're building materials to level up their crafting to make Storm Herald, or, well, if you're fucking solo dad, you're probably not making Storm Herald, you're probably making Deep Thunder. You know, but yeah, you're making Deep Thunder or you're crafting something like that. You want to have very small things that you can work towards on a grand scale. And I think another good example of this is New World. I think New World having its professions the way that it does gives players that are casual something that they can work towards on a large scale. Now, I think it took too long, but in general, I think this is a positive thing.
In an instant. Some say MMOs are dead as a result, and I don't agree with that. Recent MMO launches have been insane. There are still millions of players looking for and
the neckbeards are not gone, they're just waiting. And if there is a game that is worthy, am I the only person who is waiting and praying and hoping for a game that is worthy of me wasting 12 hours a day of my life on it for forever? That's what I'm waiting for that. It's not like I'm not going to do it when it comes out. I'm just waiting for it to come out.
For an MMO to grab them the way that the genre once did. You saw it twice in the last year, with millions showing up for the launches of New World and Lost Ark. Neither of those games held on to all of their players, but there were a lot of reasons for that prevent those games from being indicators of a dead genre. Lost Ark's pay-to-win nature ensures that it will only ever see limited success here in the West, despite actually being a solid game. And New World, it came out of the oven half-baked. It wasn't finished, but it's now making the same pivot the rest of the major MMOs did after their launches. It's hard focusing on that solo experience. It's completely revamped and fleshed out its questing experience so that you can follow a main quest chain all the way through the game. It also added a dungeon finder. It's real.
When I do the fresh start server whenever New World comes out, I mean, obviously Brimstone Sands is coming out in like 3 days or some shit, so I'll play that, but I'm also going to do the fresh start server next month, and we'll have everybody make a group, and it's going to be fun, man. I'm fucking excited.
Realize that these are the things that most MMO players crave these days. Is all of this working for New World? In anticipation of all this new content, Combined with its new zone and new weapon, its player base is up 40% in the last 30 days. Wait, scratch that. I just refreshed the page. Make that 46% in the last 30 days. Looks like their focus on the players without friends is starting to pay off. So has the solofication of MMOs ruined the genre? I don't think so.
I think that as somebody who did put not thousands, but over 1,000 hours into New World, the reason why New World was bad, like maybe 10% of it or 20% of it are problems that this video covers. Like the other 80% was just like a million other things that were just like wrong with the game on fundamental levels.
The developers didn't make MMOs solo. We did by gravitating towards the MMO that offered the stronger solo experiences. When I'm playing MMOs, most of my time is spent doing what I want to do. When I want to do it, I am literally one of the players taking advantage of the solo experience MMOs are now adding. I frequently tune into Asmongold, who has millions of people that would love to play with him, and see him doing the same thing, whether it's farming mounts in WoW or grinding up his gathering levels in New World. He's also taking advantage of the solo opportunities. I think it's because it's nice to be able to go at your speed. Sometimes you just want a solo chill activity. When you're a content creator trying to keep up with chat, or a dad trying to keep up with children, or students trying to keep up with class, the flexibility of having the solo content to dive into on those nights.
No, I think MMOs are actually the best content to stream. Like a good MMO is better content than any game. Now, I think that I think that it's better than any game for an average viewer. I think that for somebody who is the initiated, watching Valorant or CSGO is equivalent to that. Especially something like CSGO. My dad can watch CSGO and he'll be telling the players what they should do, okay? So, like, this is not impossible for other games to do, but I think that the way that MMOs tell stories and the ways that MMOs can create characters and create narratives is something that's very special and unique. And few other games can really do that.
Where you only have an hour or your friends aren't available, it makes all the difference when you're deciding what game to boot up. And as history shows, when one game offered the experience of standing in town, trying to form a group, and another offered anything else, we gravitated towards anything else. And worded like that, it's not so surprising, is it? I think the best thing MMOs can do now is have a ton of solo content waiting for us when we need it, and a ton of group content waiting for us when we want it. And that's the big difference. A lot of times,
yeah, I think that's a really, really good way to say it. I like that a lot. Because Lost Ark, for example, has some of the best group content that any MMO has. In my opinion, I like Lost Ark raids more than WoW raids. I think that they're fucking amazing. Like, whether it's the Clown raid, I didn't like Vicus, but that was just a few mechanics that were really annoying. Fundamentally, the raid was great. Vaulton, in my opinion, is probably one of the best raids I've ever done, period. Like, the first fight is fucking stupid. I don't like it. But Vaulton as a fight is one of the greatest fights of all time, in my opinion. So, and there's also a few other really good ones, like, you know, like the Abyss dungeons. The Phantom Palace, I think, was fucking amazing. Let's see, were any of the other ones good? Ark of Arrogance was okay. Oh, yeah, fucking Sea of Indolence. Sea of Indolence. The fucking Poseidon one. That was so good, too.
So when you're doing the solo content, it's because you need it. It's because there isn't really an option to do the group content at the moment because you don't have people available to do it, or you don't have the time to do it. In conclusion, solo content didn't ruin the genre. It kept it relevant. We're just not willing to stand around town for hours at a time looking for groups anymore. There's too many other online games that can put us into a game instantly. What type of player are you?
I do think that there is a value of that. And I think that people do want to be part of something bigger than that. Whether this is like a massive world PvP event, whether this is like, I think a great example of this is, what is the one time that you hear about EVE as like an MMO? Will you hear about it whenever there's some gigantic fucking galactic battle where hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of ships are destroyed? And, you know, that's one of the big things that these games have. People want the ability to be part of something bigger than themselves, but they don't want their entire experience to be contextualized around that.
solo player or the group player, or a little of both? If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more MMO content and to help out with Algorithm Senpai. I appreciate it. And if you agree or disagree, let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take on it. This is just my opinion. These are just my ramblings, so you're certainly welcome to disagree. And as always, a massive shout out to my YouTube members. Thank you so much for joining and helping support the channel so that I can continue to make the best content possible for you guys. And if you ever want to hang out with someone else that loves MMOs, be sure to swing by my Twitch stream over at twitch.tv/luckyghost. And if you don't have any plans, maybe check out one of the videos popping up on screen right now.
Yeah, I might actually try and, oh yeah! People wanted me, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Oops, didn't mean to do that 2 times. Okay, just a sec. Yeah, I was actually gonna watch this one too. I'm not gonna watch it today, but I will watch it. I actually think this was a great video. This is a very, very good video. Great question, obviously, that the video is, you know, asking. I think it's a very good answer to it as well. I think that people do like having the ability to be part of something bigger than themselves, but they don't like having it be required. Yeah, it was a great video. We'll have to watch more of his content. Lucky Ghost. Make sure to give him a sub and give him a like. I think this is really well done. It's a great, great video. I will like and subscribe to it myself. I'm going to read a few of the comments and actually see what people's opinions on this are, because I'm kind of curious to see kind of what everybody else thinks about it. Prefer to play alone, but I like seeing other player characters because it makes the world feel more alive to me. Exactly. And I think, ironically, you know what a game that really did a great job at that was? Diablo Immortal. Diablo Immortal did an incredible job at that. I think Tower of Fantasy completely fucks itself over by having too many channels and not having enough people interacting and playing with each other. I like the option of being able to group, but ultimately I play alone. Time restrictions doesn't help with that. Exactly, yeah. You just don't have time. I'm a player who didn't even get into MMOs until my mid-50s. I'm 65 now. I'm more into it for the lore and exploration than the bashing big critters parts. Yeah, I think that's the same with my mom, right? I think that, yeah, a lot of those people are much more about playing old, you know, playing alone and, you know, like just being an old person playing a game. That's about it. Do content on regular, no friends playing the games I want to play, and if they do, it's on a different server. Yeah, exactly. As I said, I think servers are fucking stupid and there's no reason for them to exist. Excellent video. Yeah, I really do think this is very, very good video. I like it a lot. I hope more people then don't play an MMO. Well, why should you tell... I think that's stupid. Nobody is saying that there shouldn't be any group content. But I think that making it to where group content is the only content in the MMO is not a good idea. And it's just evident that it's not a good idea by every observable metric possible. So, I mean, like, somebody could just turn that around and say the exact same thing to you. It doesn't make sense. I think that MMO and playing a massively multiplayer online game, even in the context of that, there's nothing that by its definition implies that you have to play cooperatively with other people in order to accomplish tasks. There's nothing that explicitly says that. Now, it's implied through the history of the games, but it is still only implied. That's it. PoE is a good example. I think PoE doesn't do a good enough job at that. But yeah, it is cool to see people in Oriath and see what their gear is, or see what kind of stuff they have on their MTX, but you can't inspect people in PoE. I think PoE could actually learn a lot from Diablo Immortal in that aspect. Having other people out in the world and out in the cities, and you can inspect them and see what gear they have on. I think that would make PoE 2 a lot better. PoE does feel disconnected from the world? Yeah, exactly. MMO should be massive with many gameplay options. Yes. React to Internet Historian's video, it's incredible. Yes, I will react to it soon. I'm not going to watch it today. But as I said, you know, this is probably the earliest I've gone live in, like, over a week. I've had so much, like, random shit go on, and then yesterday I wasn't even able to go live at all. So, today I just kind of want to chill and do my own thing. And then in a day or two, whenever I can continue this habit, then I'll be able to go live earlier and actually do something else. And so, yeah, let's see. I'll read maybe 1 or 2 more. For those the players that changed for me, back in the day, if you were an average or casual player, you'd still get in a guild or a group, no problem, and have fun. But today, if you haven't spent 10 hours min-maxing every single little thing of the game, you wouldn't be considered for a group or guilds. I don't think that's true. I think that's bullshit. I think this is just, like, more people that are, like, fucking bad at video games that are upset that nobody wants to carry them. I think it's just, yeah, it's just fucking dumb. No, it's just complete bullshit. Yeah, it's like I go and I look at like I'll read trade chat on my server in Wrath, and there's so many trash can guilds full of trash cans looking for more trash cans to clear Nax with. Like, that's just the truth. Yeah, give me 1 second. My fucking desk is messed up again. Oh my god. Today, trade's my favorite praise of the week sometimes. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it's all about, man. Dumpster guilds, yeah, they are. I remember there was this one guild, we called it the brown standard of guilds, because whenever that guild killed a boss, you knew it was easy. Oh yeah, I mean, this has always been the case. Now that was back in Burning Crusade, a long time ago. But even back then, people would say this same stuff. Sounds, yeah, so, yeah, this is the guy that dies to the Kel'Thuzad Void Zone, and it's like, where's the heals? What happened? Well, the healer's asleep again? What the hell's this? People expecting an equal amount of investment as elitism. Yeah, exactly. It's so fucking pathetic, man.